Welcome to FO Talks. With me is Daniel Sullivan. He's the Director for Africa, Asia, and the Middle East at Refugees International. He has been focused on Myanmar for over a decade, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Daniel, Myanmar is going to have its election this month. It'll be on the 28th of December. But for our viewers who haven't followed Myanmar closely, can you tell us exactly what is happening? Is this an election or is it really a controlled political exercise by the military junta?
Yeah, it's very hard to imagine in any way that this could be a free and fair election given the current climate. We have the military junta that took over after February 2021 that continues to attack different areas. There are several ethnic-based resistance groups around the country that are fighting. And most fundamentally for me, you have a military junta that is responsible for genocide against the Rohingya people. And more than 1 million of them fled to Bangladesh and have not been able to return, even as their homeland is still unsafe for return. So you don't have access to polls and free and fair elections. You have the junta with a horrible past that they haven't been held accountable for. You have the most popular political parties that were before the coup attempt are not allowed to participate in this election, and then you have the junta actively suppressing any kind of protests and arresting potential candidates. So, yeah, in no way is it possible to imagine that this would be a free and fair election.
Right. So do you think the junta is trying to use this election to buy legitimacy? Or do you think this is simply just another way for them to consolidate power?
It's absolutely an attempt to grab onto legitimacy. I think it's also a reaction to pressure from the outside, from supporters like China that would like to see something of a more stable government that they could influence beyond the military. And it's something that plays with other countries in ASEAN and otherwise who want to see some semblance of a return towards a civilian-like government, but that's not what the junta is offering here. So, it's very worrying. It's also worrying that it seems to be playing out in different areas. And here, being based in the United States, we've seen where there has been condemnation of these elections, bipartisan, from Republicans, from Democrats. But one portion of the administration is using this as a way to put forward the broader kind of crackdown on immigration and asylum in the United States. Kristi Noem had mentioned or announced that they're going to end temporary protected status for people from Burma who are in the United States and fear persecution if they go back. And one of the things she cited was the holding of elections. So we're already seeing it, this false narrative of this being positive, affecting at least some portion of the U.S. government as well.
Right. Daniel, there have been reports coming out of Myanmar that with the election just 2 weeks away, there have been mass arrests. There is censorship of not just televised media, but censorship of social media as well. Of course, the National League for Democracy has been banned from running in the election. Their leader and former Prime Minister Aung San Suu Kyi remains under house arrest. So can this election be even considered legitimate given what's happening in Myanmar?
In a word, no. I mean, this is the playbook for military juntas or leaderships or demagogues that want to completely control an election. And it's interesting to remember that it was, the success of the NLD in the elections in 2020, 2021 is somewhat what sparked this reaction by the military. They were so popular in the popular elections that that the military felt the need to stage a coup. And now they're trying to say that, okay, well, we've taken care of all of that. But the reality on the ground shows that clearly, number one, the junta does not control a large portion of the territory. They're actively fighting with different groups. And as you said, they're cracking down on those who may participate. And the other thing to point out is just kind of the way the rules are set up. Already the existing constitution guarantees 25% of seats in the parliament to the military. So that's already something that would have needed to be reformed to really be a legitimate kind of civilian leadership. They're leaning into that and then adding to that with, the vast majority of candidates right now are affiliated with the military. And then the other thing to point out is that the way the rules are set up, even if one poll is open in a territory, that's considered legitimate, and that could be just on a military base. So there's just so many measures, and the lack of credible outside observers participating in this, that just again, in a word, could this be considered legitimate? No.
Daniel, you've worked extensively in Myanmar with the people of Myanmar, with refugees in Myanmar. So you definitely have an ear to the ground. Do you know how the people of Myanmar are viewing this election? Are they enthusiastic? Are they optimistic? Or they're completely hopeless?
Yeah, I think it's, it'll depend who you talk to and what regions. I mean, like I've spent a lot of time going to, I've been to Rakhine State and to the camps in Bangladesh to speak with the Rohingya. To them, it's very clear, right? These are the same people that carried out the genocide. So, and they're not even home yet. The vast majority of them. I've been to camps in Kachin State and then along the border with Thailand, and I think similarly there's these ethnic armed groups that have real grievances with the junta and are outside of this and are seeing that continuing to fight is the only way to protect their population. So again, there they see these as complete shams as well. I think some people inside the center and within the areas controlled by the junta maybe see a potential path. But again, even those who are deciding to try to participate in this in opposition to the junta in a democratic, open way are being cracked down on. So yeah, I don't see from the Burmese population writ large much hope with this or any kind of legitimacy with it.
One of the major concerns in Myanmar especially after the 2021 coup, has been the infighting that's been going on, which has, of course, displaced thousands of people internally. There are ethnic armed groups, there are rebel groups, they're all fighting the army. So there is a lack of, I would say, peace in the country. How do you think these elections are going to play out, given that Myanmar is almost in a state of conflict throughout the year? And here I want you to talk about ASEAN, the grouping that has failed to negotiate peace in Myanmar. How do they see the December 28 election? Is this the perfect chance for them to step in and bring some stability in the region and the country?
Yeah, it would be nice to think that could be, but I don't really see how that can play out for the reasons you said. There's vast portions of the country that are still either held by ethnic armed groups in opposition or actively being fought over, active airstrikes happening from the military. So not really a conducive environment for an election. And as I mentioned, there's the crackdowns and arrests. ASEAN came forward, shortly after the conflict started with a plan for what could be what needs to happen to reach peace. And fundamentally that what they're asking for has not been reached. I mean, the way that the military continues to attack different areas. I think it's really important for ASEAN countries to not provide any kind of sense of legitimacy with this. I don't think that they gain anything from it. And I think that it's important to show the world that this is, what it is. We're not looking to empower the junta that's responsible for atrocities that continues to crack down. This is not going to help. And even inside within the military, I think the elections hold a lot of uncertainty as to whether the leader of the junta right now, Min Aung Hlaing, will continue to hold power, or will there be tensions inside there and how that will play out. There's just a lot of uncertainty around these elections. And I think, again, important for ASEAN not to convey any sense of legitimacy here.
Let's talk about the broader geopolitics surrounding Myanmar. And I'll mention the countries that it borders. Of course, it borders India, China. There's also Bangladesh and Thailand. But there are other nations like Russia as well who have high stakes in Myanmar. How is this election going to affect the regional dynamics? And do you see India, China, Bangladesh maybe playing a stabilizing role when it comes to the elections, which are in almost 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's a complicated area, right? The cross, and has been for centuries, like an area where different influences cross. You mentioned China. China has a huge role and influence and an interest in some level of stability. You know, they have their Belt and Road Initiative, where they want to build pipelines and roads and across Myanmar, and as long as it remains unstable, that is not in their interest. And India has similar concerns with building ports and things like that, and economic interests. Not to mention the instability that comes from refugees being pushed out into these neighboring countries. So, yeah, I think there should be a common interest with China and other countries of getting stability. I think that the calculation China has in terms of pushing for these elections is a false one. Is not going to lead to further stability. It may lead to some further leverage for them in their own personal interest, but I think ultimately it's not going to get us any closer to peace. In fact, I think it'll be the opposite. You know, pushing things more towards instability. But yeah, again, with the refugees, you know, and I think it's important also to point out the humanitarian situation in the country. There's a third of the population is in need of humanitarian aid. And it's very difficult to get that in and across lines and across borders from the outside as well. And more than 3.5 million people have been displaced, and that's many inside the country, but many to outside the country. And I mentioned the Rohingya. There's over a million that have fled to Bangladesh, but there are tens of thousands that have made it to India. A lot of concerns with the policies that those countries have and how they're treating those Rohingya coming in. But it should also be in the interest of those countries to find stability in Burma, not to support the junta and these elections, because it is very likely there'll be more instability and greater flows of people outside of the country.
Yeah, Daniel, when I was doing my research on the upcoming election, I was surprised because the attention of global media is scarce right now. Possibly because the election is 2 weeks away, but still, there was very few coverage. There was not enough information. So, what should the international community actually do right now? How are other countries, especially organizations like the one that you are in, and other organizations like the UN, how are they going to be involved in this election? Do you think there are going to be more sanctions coming in? Do you think humanitarian corridors are going to be set up? Are there going to be international observers for the upcoming election? Can you give us an idea of the big role that the international community can play?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you're absolutely right. The world's attention is on many other areas of the world, whether it's Israel, Gaza, or Ukraine, or there's just a whole slew of crises, even beyond the whatever news of the day or scandals or things that come out there. So it's tough to get that attention. I mentioned earlier, even within the United States government, the disconnect of the way that people are understanding what's happening in Burma. But I think what is important is so far, and I said this is a bipartisan issue, is we've seen members of Congress that are very active saying, like, recognizing the realities on the ground and saying this cannot be a free and fair election. And so, between the United States, European countries have placed sanctions on various junta members. I think it's important to continue that pressure. It's important for them not to send, and they're not sending observers, and they're not. I think it will be important for them not to recognize this as a legitimate election. I think any kind of just continuing to recognize the realities that this is not a legitimate leader of the Myanmar people, and then beyond that, just continuing to follow on the accountability track. Right, there is an independent mechanism set up by the UN that has done extensive research and documenting of abuses, and moving forward on making sure that those are continue to be surfaced and addressed whether in International Criminal Court of Justice or International Criminal Court, ICC, or by any other mechanism. So I think the diplomatic engagement and pressure backed by sanctions, and not conveying any legitimacy to the junta, and then ultimately pushing for accountability and the will of the vast majority of the Myanmar civilians.
Yeah. On that note, Daniel, thank you very much for joining Fair Observer, and I'll have to bring you back again once the elections are done, probably to do an analysis of how things went down, whether the election was free and fair, and what next for Myanmar. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate the attention on this and appreciate joining you.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.